Hi all, this is Jake, and I just wanted to put a little warning in front of this episode where Carrie and I are going to talk about A.S. King's book, Everybody Sees the Ants, because the book is, I think, really good and entertaining, but also is kind of intense, and I think our discussion also has those traits. So, you know, if you're sensitive to discussions of suicide, bullying, sexual assault, and things like that, then just be aware that there's some of that in this episode. With that said, I think this is a good conversation, and it was really fun to talk to Carrie again about this book, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
I'm Jake.
And this is Love You Like Crazy. This is a podcast where we talk and rant about young adult books.
Carrie, it's you.
Jesus Christ, that was really intense. Jacob,
it's fucking intense, man. I miss you.
How are you?
I'm good. I read an excellent book, and its name is Everybody Sees the Ants, and it's by A.S. King, and we're going to talk about it in a minute.
We sure are. I am really excited to talk about this book. I love YA like crazy, and this book is probably, I don't know where it is in my top, but it's one of my tops. I love it.
I should say, well, okay, so it's possible that people are listening. This is the first episode they're listening to after like finding this podcast through the interviews that I did at PodX. So if so, you should be aware that, well, there are definitely going to be spoilers. And also, you know, in the little intro I put it before the interview episodes, I said, that there might be the odd swear or two, but from the fact that I like already said fuck, you may have figured out that there's definitely going to be a fair amount of swearing in this, so just be aware of that.
Okay, so we read a book.
We did. So this was a book that you picked.
Everybody Sees the Ants by A.S. King.
So I approached this book with caution. Because
of Dust of 100 Dogs?
Yes.
Yeah. But how did you feel?
It was good. I really like this a lot. There are like all kinds of sort of weird imagery and things going on it, but it also does not hesitate to like just sock you right in the gut.
Oh yeah. Even when, like, for me, I was sort of expecting some of the socks in the gut, it doesn't make it any less impactful.
Let me ask you a question, actually.
Okay.
So sometimes we read, you know, mostly we read books and we like them or we don't, but they are just like entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Other times we read a book and I'm like, everything in this book is so applicable to what is happening right now in the world that I can barely stand it.
Yeah.
And this is one of those books. So I don't know, like, how much do we want to go down that road? Because that could turn this episode into a super bummer.
You know, I'm okay with you know, bumming out if it makes for a good conversation.
Sure. So, okay. So maybe I'll get to that in a bit, but so what do you want to talk about first?
I mean, we can just like basically talk about what the book is about. And it's about a young boy, 15-year-old boy named Lucky, who is bullied.
Yeah, he's bullied by this kid, Nader.
Yeah, Nader McMillan.
I mean, it all sort of unfolds, like the story of the bullying unfolds throughout the book. Different details are revealed.
Yeah, so it starts off where they're at the pool and, you know, Lucky's getting it from Nader. And then you sort of find out that this has been going on since they were 7.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, when you're 15 and it started at 7, that's been a long time of getting tormented by the same person. And this person is like, not like a little bit of a bully, but he is a fucking asshole to everybody. But especially Lucky.
Yeah, I mean, people are his friends basically out of fear.
Yeah.
Like Lucky tries to be his friend for a while out of fear. And it works for a while, but then it very much doesn't work anymore.
Correct.
So what ends up breaking up that friendship is that there's an assignment in social studies class to create a survey and have all the kids at the school fill it out and then do a report on it with charts and graphs and everything. And so the question that he decides to do on his survey is, how would you commit suicide? And when news of this gets back to the administration of the school, they aren't happy about it, and they bring him in. And then they also bring in his friends, including Nader. And Nader doesn't like the officials prying into his business.
No.
But also people fill out the survey.
Yeah, that becomes like a whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something we want to talk about right now, or
we will get to that, I think. So yeah, so he's bullied, and his parents don't really know what to do about it. His parents are a turtle and a squid. His dad's the turtle. He's a chef who, hasn't had a father his whole life. His father was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Is that correct? Vietnam?
Prisoner of war, MIA, missing in action.
Yeah.
Which is a big theme in the book also, and one that I don't have a ton to say about, I think. But it's like a big part of the book.
It's such a huge part of the book. It is, the whole, and can you just say like Palmia? Is that, or do you have to say the whole like POWMIA? Like, how is that pronounced?
I'm not actually sure. I don't think I've ever heard it said aloud. I always just spell it out, but maybe that's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Siri. This will go very poorly. How do you say POWMIA?
Sure. Translate into which language? 好的.
Okay. So that's it. That's in Mandarin Chinese.
Great.
Very helpful.
But the thing is, it's just such a huge part of the friggin' book. I want to get it right.
Sure.
So his grandfather's a prisoner of war, missing in action, never came back. And so Lucky's grandma Janice was a huge advocate for the prisoners of war and, never sort of gave up trying to find Grandpa Harry. And when she was dying, she said, like, okay, it's your turn. You got to find him.
Right. And she said it to Lucky, to the kid who was 7 years old at the time.
Yes.
Not to his father, her son.
So Lucky took this sort of on as his quest.
Not really considering the fact that she was super hopped up on morphine at the time, probably.
No, yeah, she was super fucked up. I mean, she was literally dying. And he was also 7. So, like, anything that, you say to a 7-year-old, it's going to sort of get lost in translation anyway.
All right. Can I break in and ask you a question?
Yes.
This is a very important question.
Yes.
What the fuck is the deal with the ants?
The ants are my favorite part of this whole fucking book. I love them so much. First of all, Jacob.
Yes.
Everybody sees the ants.
Yes.
Everybody.
Right.
No, I love them. I think they're the best Greek chorus ever. They're weird. They're cool. They're, they sort of serve as like a comic foil on occasion.
Yeah. Greek chorus is good. I hadn't exactly thought of it that way, but that's a really good. Yeah.
You are welcome. See, I am a smart cookie.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, the ants are like my favorite part of the whole book. And for this book, ants are sort of representative of trauma. There's a lot of dreams about meeting Grandpa Harry in the jungle. So, at the end of the book, when Grandpa Harry and Lucky are talking in this dream state, and he says, well, everybody sees them because everyone's got trauma. Like, if you don't, there's more of us that see them than don't.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I think, the ants are sort of what helps you get through the shitty times.
Mm-hmm. I think early on they say kind of mean things to him.
Yeah, they're not always nice.
But they get you through.
But they get you through it. Like it's like your inner voice. Like, when his face is getting scraped on the pavement by Nader, like they're like, oh, look at this fucking douchebag. Look what's happened to him. But I'm sure that's what, one of the things he's thinking is like, oh my God, everyone's watching this shit happen to me and I'm such a loser and ow.
Yeah.
So, and the ants. But the ants are always there and they got little signs and they're doing dances. I love them. Anyway.
Yes. And you describe these as dreams, but
But are they?
Are they? Exactly.
That's, I think, the biggest question of the whole book is this real? And I think the answer is yes, but I don't know how. And that's part of the magic, or the magical realism, as it were. Because, you know, when he wakes up from these dreams or these dream states, he's got evidence of something. You know, the first one, the first time he went to the jungle, he came back and he had a cigar in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and from then on, it was a lot of things, until the very end, where it's, you know, his grandfather's wedding ring. And how the fuck would he have gotten his grandfather's wedding ring? Like, there's literally no way to have gotten that. So it has to be real.
Yeah, that's what I thought also. But it's left a little bit.
It's super ambiguous. And it's one of those things that, like, even as he's, you know, because at the end he tells his dad, like, look, I'm going to break this shit down for you. You don't see the remainder of that conversation, but you sort of see how he's, you know, starting to talk to them about, like, what he's seen and what he's been through. I guess I sort of, like, can't imagine how that conversation is going to go, because it's so bananas.
Yeah. I mean, particularly because they, you know, they're dreams, but they're kind of real, but they're also, like, very, like, they all follow dream logic.
Yeah. Like, sometimes he has limbs, sometimes he's missing limbs, sometimes he's missing teeth, sometimes, you know, there's a Twister game. Sometimes
it's in Vietnam, but other times it's in places that
yeah, sometimes it's at the pool.
Yeah, that was the thing.
So after he got his last, you know, round of bullying, after he got his face completely fucked up by Nader, his mom takes him to Arizona to stay with her brother Dave and her sister-in-law Jody.
Yes.
And then shit gets fun, because Jody's a nutter, Dave's an asshole, but also not, but also yes.
Well, right. Like, I feel like one of the things about the book is, like, at the end, there isn't a real, you know, it's not like a happy ending in the sense, like, everything is going to be great. Everything is solved. The adults are going to act the way that we want adults to in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not it. It's all sort of about, like, it's about having sympathy for people, even people who are doing bad things, while at the same time recognizing that you have to do what you can to stop people who are doing bad things. You know, even if you're scared, even if you might get hurt, you know, you kind of got to do what you got to do. And sort of the way that it resolves is he tells Nader, like, you have to stop. Like, if you do anything to me, or if I hear you doing anything to anyone else, I'm going to go to the police.
Which was a very scary thing for him. Like, as you know, as confident as he may have acted, he and the aunts were all, like, freaking their shit out.
Yeah.
But he came to that conclusion on his own. No one else sort of could come to the rescue for him. You know, if his parents had done anything, you know, we all know what would have happened. It just would have escalated in some other way.
Right. But then that's not where it ends, right? That's not how the Nader situation ends.
No.
There's this whole other thing where, like, the overaged boyfriend of one of the lifeguards, or not one of the lifeguards, just a student at the school who
Nader keeps pulling the bikini top off of.
The boyfriend catches wind of the situation, finds out that Nader is there, and just, like, beats the crap out of him.
Sure does.
Lucky's response to that is basically like, let's see, I should have the quote, but I don't.
All I can do is hope he doesn't hurt Nader too much. And I really can't believe, after everything Nader's put me through, that I'm actually hoping that. But I am.
Yeah. So it's like, so the resolution is, like, it's partially a personal growth thing. It's also partly getting Nader to, like, back off, and it's just kind of complicated and interesting in a way that I really appreciated.
Yeah. Let's see, who else can we talk about? There's one other really, really important character in this book, and that would be
Ginny.
Correct.
Ginny the ninja.
Ginny the kindness ninja. She's a hair model.
Well, she is for a while there.
She's a hair model. Her mom is Boinkin' Uncle Dave. She is in the Vagina Monologues with some of her friends. And And she teaches Lucky how to kiss.
That's true. So one thing I want to say is like the whole thing of going to the Vagina Monologues with a bunch of young women is very reminiscent of the old knitting group, I gotta say.
I miss the old knitting group. It's not that we were boisterous.
Okay.
It's just that we had a lot to say about our bodies. It's like I had a lot to say about my. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we made you uncomfortable and you loved every second of it.
That seems like a reasonable description of the dynamic there.
Because I would say that's how Lucky feels. Like he is terrified of these women. He loves them like immediately.
Yeah.
And is very fearful of the power that they wield.
That's yeah. I have a question about. So, I forget it was in the last episode or the episode before or what, but I think it was in the last episode. We were talking about like the female characters in books written by men, which we had done a couple of books by men in a row, and we thought that the female characters were not super well rounded or necessarily well written, even in the book that we liked.
That is fair.
So, I mean, this book is kind of interesting to think about, just in terms of, because in A.S. King is a woman, I should note. Like I feel like in both of the books of hers that I've read, the characters are a little bit larger than life, or maybe even, I wouldn't say cartoony necessarily, but in that direction a bit.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to talk about like the representations, but I thought
I think it's more common for women to write good boy characters than it is for men to write good girl characters.
Right. Like women are definitely more encouraged to see things from like what is, and then also so much of popular culture is created by men that you get an insight from that doesn't go in the other direction necessarily.
Yeah, like, Lucky's not sitting there talking about his butt. He's talking about his scab. He's talking about that part of his appearance, but it's not like, like how a man talks about a female that he's writing, where it's always like, she looks in the mirror and she doesn't even see how gorgeous she is. Thank you for not doing shit like that, A.S. King.
Yeah, and so the male characters are kind of, there's Lucky, there's Lucky's dad, there's Lucky's grandfather via dreams, there's Uncle Dave, who, like, when Dave shows up, he seems like kind of, I mean, obviously he's the patriarchy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He doesn't cook, he lifts weights a lot.
He's always at the office.
Right. And he's like, Lucky's mother is like, Dave can be the father figure for this child whose real life father is not doing a very good job. And that all sort of seemed reasonable to me. And then at some point it turns out that Dave is cheating on his wife. And when Lucky finds that out, like his perspective on it changes quite a bit, and he no longer likes Dave.
But at the same time, like, he doesn't dislike him, which is one thing that I like about it, is like, he's allowed to have these complicated feelings. Like, I don't like Dave, but I like some of the things that I did with Dave. And I enjoyed, learning how to lift weights. And I enjoyed, cooking in their house and providing good food for them.
Yeah.
So even though like, he's like, oh, you're an asshole and I don't want to be you, I can at least appreciate some of the lessons I did learn from you, even if those lessons are what I don't want to do.
And part of his development, Lucky's development, is like synthesizing these different things. So he, early on in the book, he's like, I have no interest in cooking. I can't stand it.
I don't want to be like my dad.
But then by the end, like he he's learned to enjoy cooking. He cooks for his aunt and uncle, and then when he goes home, he helps his dad cook some things. And he's also good at it. But then he also, when he goes home, he's like, I'd want to get some weights. I want to keep lifting weights. And his parents like go with it, you know? So that, I don't know, all that dynamic I thought was like well done. What did you think about the female characters?
Well, okay, so let's start with Ginny.
Yes.
You know, Ginny is sort of controlled by her parents. They expect her to sort of be the breadwinner for the family, really. She's a hair model. She's kept under sort of lock and key until, you know, X time at night when they're both conked out on Ambien.
Mm-hmm.
But she was also maybe a little too sure of herself, which I didn't dislike, but I also didn't quite believe. I would see that more as a college age quality, not a high school age quality. But she knows who she is. And she's, you know, be damned. And the fact that, you know, she sees Lucky and is even at all like interested in speaking with him, never mind like getting to know him and vice versa. I really admire that about her, but I don't know how believable that is at the same time.
Yeah, that seemed a little random, just in terms of...
Mostly because, like, you know, okay, so there's this kid walking around and he's always got military shirts on, like always in the same friggin' outfit. Like, I'd be a little weirded out by that guy, not like, hey, I'm going to, you know, befriend that guy and teach him how to kiss. Even though Lucky's a good dude and, like, I like Lucky, I don't know how I feel about that. And the fact that she's like, you know, so sure of herself. I love that about her, but I also don't believe it. Aunt Jody, I believe a little bit more, mostly because I know women like Aunt Jody. A little bit neurotic, a little bit too obsessed with daytime television, and seeing all the problems in the world through the lens of Dr. Phil was hilarious to me. But I mean, she's living her small life and her unhappy marriage, and she's doing the best she can with what she's got, even though it's not a lot. And then there's the squid, who's Lucky's mom. She swims a lot, hence the squidness. And Lucky really fucking loves his mom, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the book, he's like, he said something like, if racing my mom in the pool makes me a mama's boy, so be it. Like, this is fun. It's like, go Lucky.
Yeah. So the word used in the book is not mama's boy, I think.
Let me find it. If it makes me a mama's boy to have fun racing my mom in the pool, then I'm Lucky Linderman, mama's boy. What was that I had said, Jacob? You said,
that's exactly what you said.
Yeah, I thought so.
And I was wrong.
Yeah.
I think my memory of that is just, was a little overwhelmed by
the rest of the sentence.
Yeah, the use of the F word.
Yeah.
And by F word, I mean, I don't mean fuck. I mean the other one.
Yeah.
Which, because of the way it's used,
it doesn't bother me as much as it would coming from an older voice.
Yeah.
I think a 15-year-old boy in the environment he's been in, it doesn't bother me as much. I mean, it's not great. It's not my favorite word.
Right.
But I think it works in the context.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's...
because those are the names that he was called. So he's basically saying, like, if you want to call me those shitty ass names, like, I guess they're right. I guess, cool.
I'm self-assured enough that I am, I'm willing to...
It's like, my name is fucking Lucky. Like, come on. My parents named me Lucky.
I also, I mean, one thing that I do... that I did think was kind of funny about the way that he used that particular word is that one of the things that he's like, hey, if it makes me a F word to think that her cheekbones are the most amazing things I've ever seen. You know, like
because her cheekbones are monumental.
Yeah. And so that feels like kind of a high school thing of a certain type of high schooler to be like, oh, you like girls? That's so gay. You know?
And you're like, that's the opposite of what, okay, we'll just go with that. Okay, so let's go to Vietnam. Let's just go there.
Okay.
So Lucky spends a lot of time in the jungle trying to rescue his grandfather, which may or may not be real.
Right.
How did you feel? Like, you know, the first time he goes into the jungle, you're like, okay, this is a dream. But as it progresses and as he's going through the story, like, how did that feel to you?
Let's see. He's basically talking to his grandfather. So it seems like there are two things going on there. One is he's getting advice from his grandfather and learning also to let go of his grandfather, which is kind of an interesting thing given the like MIA, the POW MIA thing. So he sort of develops this relationship with someone who is presumably by this point dead. But then there's also just things that happen to like kind of work through things. And there are a few like key moments in it. In one of the trips, his grandfather is killed by one of the people he knows in real life who were also in the dream. And he thinks to himself, well, good, at least now I know. And that was an interesting thing for me because like part of it, you know, part of the reason why he's having these dreams and part of the reason why his grandmother was obsessed with the POW MIA cause for her entire life is just that like the torture of not knowing. Like if he were dead and you knew it, then that's one thing. And if he's alive, then that's another. But not knowing which it is just a terrible thing. So that's kind of a thread that goes through. And he also like he goes back. In his dream, he goes back to the pool and sets up a like punji sticks, I think they're called, like sharpened sticks covered in poop. He sets up a trap outside the bathroom where he was attacked. And when that happened, I was like, wait, is this, does this have implications in real life? But as you know, it doesn't, it seems like, so that part is full dream. So I'm not being very coherent in my answer here. I think, yeah, I mean, I wasn't totally sure what, I guess I feel like I was kind of engaged in the real life stuff more, but you know, the way that it alternated between that, I feel like for the reader as well as for Lucky himself, boy, how much of this am I going to cut out?
So much.
For the reader as well as Lucky itself, like it provides a little break where the context is different and you can sort of think about what's happened since the last time.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for me, it was also a way for him to interpret what's going on in his real life and to sort of work through those things while also, you know, like you said, getting advice from his grandfather and learning about his grandfather, while also, you know, sometimes seeking revenge and sometimes, you know, because he said like a few times in the book, like, I like my dream self, because his dream self was a little more buff. And so I think that's one of the things I like about, you know, every time he goes to the jungle, it sort of gives you more insight into what's really going on in his life.
Yeah.
He talks about this kid who had the banana incident in the locker room at school and how awful it was and how, you know, terrifying it was to witness it. And of course, as the reader, I'm like, oh no, sweetie, this was you. I know this was you.
Yeah.
And later on, of course, it was revealed, yes, you know, this did happen to him and not to somebody else. But for me, like, him going to the jungle and sort of like having all the bananas there was a way to like, I guess, make peace with that horror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not like you're ever going to get over something like that. That's always going to be with you, but at least like sort of being like, okay, this is a thing that happened to me. This is not me. And I don't know. I liked the jungle for things like that.
Yeah. And the ants kind of provide a similar service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about the punches in the gut.
Yeah.
So this book is like, it's written in this sort of inventive, entertaining way. Like we talk about the bullying and stuff, and that's all like a huge part of the book. The POWMI stuff is definitely, a big part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
These are not obviously entertaining, enjoyable things to read about, but the book is fun to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has like an organizational thing where like he gets the big scab on his face and parts of it keep falling off. And so it keeps looking like different states. So it's smaller and smaller states until finally it's Hawaii, and then pieces of Hawaii fall off and then it's gone. But in between that, like there's also these, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of intense things going on. And so the first one is kids start leaving answers to the suicide questionnaire in his locker, and he doesn't think that she's seen him, but he sees a junior named Charlotte Dent leave a note that says, "I'd shoot myself, but I'd shoot Nader McMillan first." And when I read that, I was like, holy shit, this book is not playing,
No, it is not. And she puts notes in his locker more than once. Basically, as things progress, with Nader problems mainly, but also I think her family as well.
And I mean, Nader and his friends, or maybe friends as in quotes, are definitely sexually harassing her and maybe doing some pretty horrible things.
Oh yeah, they're because this is the same woman who they're pulling the top off at the pool.
Oh, that's who. Oh, it is her.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I mean, like, we have not only, seen him sexually harass her and assault her in front of lots of people at a pool. We don't know what's happened when other people aren't around. But we know it's bad enough where she would shoot him. And
it's like an outlet for her to put it in the locker, but it's also like a lot to put on him.
Because one of them said, like, I'm going to do it tonight.
Yeah. It says, what method would you choose? And it says, I'd hang myself probably next week.
Yeah.
And that was another like, that was another punch. Another thing was when Dave says fairly early on in their relationship, he says, when I was in school, I was a bullying asshole just like that kid.
Yeah.
And that's like an early sign that Dave maybe is not the good guy that he, seems to be. I
mean, you want to think that people can change, and maybe in some ways he has, but in other ways he's obviously still an asshole.
And like Lucky kind of learns to see both the good in people. I was going to say learns to see the good in people, but it's not just that. He gets to see, he like sort of sees and accepts the complexity, right?
Absolutely. I think that's the best way to put it, because like he doesn't see his dad as a bad person. He sees his dad as a complicated person.
Right.
It's not that he wants to ignore him. It's that he's, already dealt with so much shit and he's doing the best he can. And so when Lucky is able to see that, he's like, oh, it's not just me that's complicated.
Yeah, and that's part of it as well. It's just like, in some cases you know what they are, and other times you don't. But you know that like there's something here, something that happened. There's a reason why this person is the way they are, and so even if you don't know what that thing is, that can give you some sympathy for them. Even if you know that they need to be stopped.
Yeah.
And then when Ginny tells him that Dave fools around, that was kind of a big moment.
It was a big moment, but also not at all a surprise. That was one of the things I was just like, I sort of took that as like, yep, of course he is.
Yeah. I mean, Aunt Jody, so like, as I said, I was kind of on my guard when I started reading this book because Dust of 100 Dogs. Like, there were just some things. There was just so many unpleasant characters in that one, and like all of the gay characters were total like psychopaths or assholes.
Yeah.
And that made me uncomfortable about that book. And so like when Jodie showed up and she just seemed like this annoying semi-comedic pill-popping fat woman, who blames her crankiness on her period and stuff. And I was like, well, what's going on here? I don't think I like this. But she's, by the end of the book,
she's complicated too.
Right. And so then I was, different people will have different reactions, but I was like, okay, so she's got this stereotype, but then it's being challenged in this way that makes me think, that makes me more comfortable with it and liking the way that this character is handled.
Mm-hmm.
So the big gut punch. So this is, I think, like kind of masterfully done, because like you say, when they talk about the banana incident, we don't know what the banana incident is. Like, we don't know the details.
No, we know that there was a banana, that there was crying, that there was, trauma, but we don't know.
Right. That a kid was held down, and I think clothes were stripped off.
They sure were.
And then there was something with the banana, but we don't, and so that conjures all kinds of unpleasant images, right?
Yeah.
And so then finally he tells Ginny the story of the banana. And it's terrible, but it's not as bad as we thought it might be, right?
Yeah, I assumed rape.
I did too. Although I was like, but then wouldn't there be evidence? But yeah, like they shoved the banana down his mouth and like made him choke on it and threatened to do, we assume, rape with it. So it's not, so that isn't a gut, like hearing that isn't a gut punch because we've already sort of figured it out. And then he says, what I didn't tell Jenny was that boy was B. And like you, I was like, well, yeah, of course, we figured that part,
Yeah.
And then he says, and I didn't tell her that I nearly went home and shot myself that day.
Yeah.
With the gun Dad keeps on the shelf in his bedroom closet. How I would have if only the gun had been loaded.
Yeah, that part was a gut punch.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a hell of a thing.
The thing about A.S. King is that she does not fuck around. And that's one thing I really like about this book. I think there's another book that she'd written before this, Please Ignore Vera Dietz, where she sort of was, equally sort of raw. But I appreciate that, she doesn't beat around the bush. She is, some of this shit is brutal. Like the stuff that they talk about regarding the war is brutal. The stuff that happens to him is brutal. Like the stuff that happens so Ginny shaves her head, or she started to shave her head, and her mother beat the shit out of her.
Yes.
Because, that's her money right there. And you just fucked with her money. And that's awful. Like to think your mom just punches you for your hair.
Mm-hmm.
Brutal, but also not completely unbelievable.
No, I agree. And that was, so this is my note about that. I cried from when Ginny shows up at the house through the Vagina Monologues.
Oh, Jacob. I don't think I cried at any of my readings of this book, but I think I sat there with like my breath held.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, oh shit, this hurts to read because so much of what happens to Lucky happens to so many people in lots of different ways. And just to think like, not only are there people, getting hurt right now, but there are people who are hurt so badly that they are hurting other people right now. And I'm just like, oh, reading this is so hard, but also I love this book so much.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Fuck you, A.S. King, for writing a damn good book.
Yeah. So another theme of the book that I want to bring up. So I wanted to read a tweet from the woman who designed the Love You Like Crazy logo.
Okay.
Shaenon Garrity. So she tweeted, I figured out years ago that all a man needs to do to get away with sexual assault is attack someone less popular than him. But gotta say, it's not fun having guys swarm the internet to confirm it every damn time.
Oh. Yeah.
And this book, that made, I read that after I read this book, and it made me think of this book, because one of the big things in the book is like that, just how when someone sees something wrong happening and doesn't know what to do about it, like how easily we switch to spending our energy from figuring out what to do to spending our energy figuring out why we don't have to do anything. And that happens so many times in this book. And that's part of that's why I was crying when Ginny shows up at the house. It's because she shows up and no one knows what the hell to do. But Lucky doesn't know what to do either, but he does. He's like, okay, but he gets the bandages or not bandages, whatever. He gets like the medical stuff. And then once she's sort of taken care of and he finds out what happens, he's like, well, let's get the hell out of here. And he just takes her and they run off and go to the Vagina Monologues. So he doesn't know what to do, but he does something, and it shouldn't be hard, but it is. And it's something that I'm a sucker for in fiction. When I see a character who doesn't know what they're doing, trying to do their best, that's just something that will get me every time.
Yeah, it will.
Also, a movie where a little kid is learning math at the beginning. That also gets me.
Oh, this is why I just love you. You're like, I want a kid to learn math. I will cry.
Yep. Hidden Figures and A Wrinkle in Time. Those both did that. Those get the made Jake cry in the first 5 minutes seal of approval.
Good job, dude. Now, let's see. Kids learning math in movies. Totally not Googling that so I can find you a movie that'll make you cry.
Yes, the movies I don't like, the ones that have squirrels.
Ooh.
You remember watching Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with me?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And then we watched The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which has a scene guaranteed to make Carrie hate it. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I obviously have changed the subject.
It's okay. I just hate horses.
Two big nostrils.
So big. They're the worst animals ever.
I
know you've got friends who like them and all, but they're wrong. If you can fit your fist in an animal's nose, like, that is too big.
Understood.
The end.
So, like, the whole, like, his teachers and the guidance counselor are like, look, Nader's not causing problems, you are. And everyone knows that his father is a lawyer who would like sue the school if they tried to do anything and stuff like that. And so instead they just are like, Nader's not the problem here. The problem is something else. And it also, again, to be a total bummer of like the whole, like, let's change from a discussion of what's going on to what exactly is the definition of a concentration camp.
Yeah. Let's not talk about what's happening. Let's talk about how I don't like what you're saying about what's happening. Because it hurts me. It makes me feel like I'm a bad person, which I totally am.
Right.
Oy. This book. Now I've got a gut punch.
Sorry. Oof.
But I'm glad we read it. I'm glad we talked about it. I think this book is, like, for a book that's completely magical realism. I think it's one of the more accurate books about the topic of bullying. Because it's not just like someone is picking on you. It is like a horrific thing that sort of infiltrates all parts of your life. And I kind of want some ants.
Yes. Well, everyone sees them.
I haven't yet, and that's kind of a bummer. I mean, it's great, but I want real ants. I want like real cartoon ants. I want them to be about Smurf size, because in my brain, they're not like ant size. They're a little bit bigger. They're like, maybe, I don't know, the size of 2 tennis balls. That's how big I want my ants to be.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Because then at least you can hear them when they're talking. Because, while they are a Greek chorus and they're sort of speaking in unison, you need to be able to read their little signs and see their little outfits. So they can't be, ant size. They have to be bigger.
I agree.
The end.
I really appreciate, because we did this because we read the other book and then afterwards you're like, we need to read another A.S. King book. There are ones that are really good, and you shouldn't let this one be your only impression of this author. And you were totally right. So I appreciate that.
Yay, I'm 3 for 3.
You're always, yeah.
What's our next book anyway?
Well, I'll give you a hint. This is a book that will, I understand, make both of us cry.
Plain Kate.
That's what I've got. Is that the one that you want to do?
Yeah, it's so good.
All right. Plain Kate, Erin Bow is the author.
It is an amazing book. I think you're really going to like it. There's so much in this book. Kate is a phenomenal character, and you will sob like a bitch.
Sounds like me, frankly.
I remember the first time I read it, I was like, it was 2:00 in the morning and I was finishing up the book and I was just like dry heaving. There's like, it's really embarrassing, but also just so satisfying.
Well, I'll look forward to that emotional roller coaster.
I know. I bet you can't wait.
So I want to mention that we have a Patreon. I also want to increase the size of the text in this window so I can read it.
What, are you blind?
I'll tell you God's honest truth, Carrie. I think that my glasses are dirty because of crying. So my vision is a little blurry right now.
Oh my God, I love my friend so much.
So if you go to patreon.com/loveyalike-crazy, you'll get more information about it. So there's a bunch of bonus episodes and things there. Also, I think I said either 4 or 5, I forget. The first 4 or 5, let's call it 5, Patreons will have me write and sing them a song in an episode. And actually, we have a Patreon. So I guess that means I have to sing a song.
Oh, shit. I think that is correct. That is 100% correct.
Now, I literally finished writing this about 30 seconds before you called me.
Oh, so it's going to be a doozy.
It may be a doozy. Do you remember who the patron is?
If I need to wager a guess, it's your mom.
Yeah.
Hey, Babs.
The devil went down to Worcester. He just went there on a lark. He was looking for souls just for the lulz, and he headed to Castle Park. But now Barbara Redacted was there. He said, I've got something for you. She said, there's nothing that you've got that I wouldn't want, you know it's true. He left to deal with others, but she followed him around. He quickly realized she never let the deal go down. He said, you leave me alone, or else I'll throw you in the sticks. She said, you're on my home turf, son. I declare you 86th. Old Satan went back home, then he sat and thought a spell. He realized that he hadn't handled that situation well. There was no way to avoid it, even for the dad of lies. He called Barbara up while she was making rhubarb pie. The father of lies apologized for the rude way he had acted. And that's the way the story ends for Barbara Redacted. And that's the way the story ends for Barbara Redacted. Thanks, Mom.
Yay!
So if you want something weird like that, you can be a Patreon. You can also, if you don't have the money or you don't like Patreon, you can also leave us a review on iTunes. And when I see that, I'll add you to the list as well.
So this is an episode?
Yeah, this was an episode. It's been a little while since we recorded, but
I know.
When I was in Nashville, like in every interview, I was like, man, if Carrie was here, this would be so much better.
Carrie would be like, yo, motherfuckers.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll talk again soon.
We will.
And talk about Sob Together over Plain Kate.
Will we ever?
Give me a call when you get back. Hey there.
Hey.
LoveWhyLikeCrazy.com.
He's my Bowser Jr.
All killing Mario together.
Yes. We destroy what Bruce calls Red Guy. Fuck Red Guy.
He's had it too easy for too long.